Okay, just real quick, since we had a discussion about this anyways. So I have here, and I've already got the logic built, so we're going to run through it, but kind of more of an old school style inventory. So here's a bunch of items. So I can go over and I can pick up my pistol, and it goes in my hand, supposedly. And I can say pick up something else, like I will say a shotgun, and it goes on my back. And if I pick up another shotgun, I throw the pistol. If I go over here and pick up this axe, I'm going to throw the axe. Now I can hit one, I can swap my weapons out. I can go back and forth all day long. Right, so I got this gun, I can grab that gun. Maybe I swap over. Oh, I guess they're both shotguns. Right, and there we have item switching. So, real easy. Here is an example of my shotgun. So it has its collider, its gravity, it has a trigger on it, and it has this FSM called item. And in the item, it has just a simple pickup of trigger event, and we can even watch this happen, where if I walk over to the item, I'm here, and if I walk away from the item, I'm not there. Pretty simple, right? Just trigger, enter, trigger, exit. But while I'm in trigger, enter, if I hit this button, I'm going to pick it up. And there's tons of different ways you can do pickup. This is just as an example. So if I pick it up, all I'm going to do is I'm going to send an event to the player to pick up. And then I'm going to disable this FSM. Like that. So that's literally all this item's doing. It's not going to set data. It's not doing anything crazy. So, on the player, I have slots. I created an empty, and we called slots. And I put them all sorts of different places. And this makes things really easy. Right? Because if I put a shotgun, say, in my back, and I zero it, it sits perfectly there. Just perfect, right? Now, if you look at my axe, oh, that was my axe. Whoop. Good. If I put my axe there, and I zero it, oh, it sits there, right? But I had to put the axe in an object, and that's because, let's just copy that. And if I put the actual axe there itself, I had some weird, stupid rotation that I didn't like. Or maybe it wasn't the axe. Oh, it had to be the axe. I guess it wasn't that bad of a rotation. But anyways, I wanted to change the rotation. Right, so now it's sitting like that. But I put it in an empty. And that's kind of common. Like, you'll find that a lot with models. Like if I grab a model and I wanted to put a pistol in this person's hand, one of the things I find just a million times easier to work with anything is if I'm going to take a gun, this nail gun, and I'm going to put it in her right hand. You know, it looks stupid right there. Obviously, it's not lined up. So I don't like moving this thing. But what I do like to do is I can put an empty. Let's put the empty and put this inside the empty. Okay, and now let's move this gun. Where you kind of line it up. However, I'm not going to do this precise, for speed reasons. But you just kind of line it up, and you call it good. And then you take this as the whole item, right? And then if you want, you can also put an object here as a holder as well. But now this is like the nail gun. So if I were to take this item and put it in her hand, I can put a position of 0 in it, and it's going to fit just perfect. I don't got to screw around and do a billion other things, right? Like it's 0 sitting right there. It just, for me, it makes things so much easier to work with. It just makes sense. So that's kind of what I did here, right? Like these objects, I put the shotgun there, and I turned these objects so that the weapons would be facing proper things, and if needed, I put the object inside an empty and adjusted this object in comparison to the empty. So that's kind of one trick there. Just hold on, put under your hat. So anyways, we have these slots. We have different slots, and as you can see on the weapons, they also have a variable, right? Like we have this logic, but we also have a variable called rest. And this one says back, that one says right side, that one says back. And you can make them whatever you want, right? And they kind of match here. So what I did is I used and if you haven't used these things are very fast, very effective, is a hash table. So they're kind of like a fancy array, but they're much faster on performance, much easier and lighter to search. So I gave this hash table a reference of slots, and I pre-filled the count by 3 and said, okay, we have the right side. I drug that in there, the back side, and the hand, and then I just named them: hand, back side, and back and right side. And you can name them whatever you want: slot 1, slot 2, whatever. So it's more or less now I can say, hey, hash table, what's back? The string back, and it's going to give me this value. If I say what's hand, it gives me this value, right? So this is a great way to do maps, little data maps. So in our slots, and I'm going to break this up so it's super simple. We don't need to look at the logic of both slots because they're identical, essentially, right? So we only really have a little bit of logic here. Is when the item says, hey, pick up, I do get event sent by. So it was sent by this item. So I have this integer called a pointer. And it can only really be 0 or 1. And you could use even true or false or an enum for this, but whatever, I used an integer. So, and it just tells me what slot are we on. Are we on slot 1 or are we on slot 2? So default value is 0, so we're on slot 1. All right, so we go to slot 1. Now we also have 2 variables here called item 1, item 2. They're game object variables, which is the game object in slot 1 and the game object in slot 2. Okay, so if we're picking something up and we're on slot 1, do we have an item in slot 1? And if we don't, if it's null, then let's just pick this item up. So I say, okay, let's incoming item, turn off your gravity. Turn on is kinematic. Then let's hash table get from our reference slots. Let's get the hand. I'm going to store that as 2 slot. And I'm going to set parent of the incoming item to the 2 slot. And then I want to reset local position. This is one of the beauty parts of this set parent, is the fact that you can also change positions on this thing. I like that. And then I want to set game object. And this is important, or else this will break the logic, right? Item 1 is now incoming item. Okay? So that's, we're picking something up and we have nothing. We just run here and just store it in. Now, if we do have something, if it's not null, we're holding something. Let's check our backup. Let's check our other slot, the slot we're not using, right? Item 2. So is item 2 null? If item 2 is null, okay, well then same idea. Let's, turn off gravity, set as kinematic, but now let's get the FSM string on the incoming item of its rest. And that's what you've seen here. So it says back. Okay, so now that we have that, let's go to our hash table and get that value. And as you've seen, we have one called back, and it returns this. Okay, let's set parent of the incoming item to this slot, right, because it's still named that slot. Reset its position and set game object item 2 as the incoming item. Pretty forward. Now this one here is the only one that gets a little tiny bit more complex, is when we have to switch, right? Because if we pick up an item, and we have an item in slot 1, okay, let's check the alt. We also have an item in slot 2. Okay, well now let's go back, and you could do this with slot 2 or with slot 1. I chose slot 1. Okay, let's take slot 1 now. Let's turn the gravity back on slot 1. Turn is kinematic off slot 1. Set parent of slot, or of this item 1, to null. And this is just an empty variable, empty game object variable I made, right? You just make a, right? I can make another one. Real easy. Just game object, also null. There, done. And just don't fill it. Don't put anything in it, right? I could use that. There, done. It's not going to change the logic at all. So set parent to null on item 1. Add force, because now that we've turned on gravity, add force, and you probably almost want to do a little bit of randomness to it, maybe some torque, but whatever. I'm adding a little bit of force to item 1 self because it's facing forward anyways. And then enable again, and it's off. All right, my daughter's starting to flip her lid. Enable the FSM on item 1, right? Because when we pick these things up, we turn this FSM off, right? At this point in time, you could also turn the trigger off and turn it back on at this stage. I didn't worry about it. And then once that's done, so we've now thrown the object out of our hands. Now we're going to take the incoming item and we turn its gravity off, is kinematic. We get the hand slot. We set parent to the incoming item, so it's just kind of like these ones now, and then we set game object item 1 as the incoming item. Right, so we have to clear this one out first. So we just throw it out, set it in here, and that's it. Right, and this one's the exact same, only this one's item 2, right? And now we're looking at, okay, well now we're setting item 2, and this one's looking at, now we're looking at item 1 as the alternate. Right, so exact same thing, just one's slot 2 and one's slot 1. So like I said, it's pretty simple. We have a pointer, and this pointer comes more into play later. So this is just how we do the pickup, right? We check our hand, we check our alternate hand, and then if need be, we take some drastic action. So the last one is item switching. And if we go into the item switching, it's pretty simple. I just have it as get key down swap. So we hit the swap button, and we get that pointer from the other FSM, and then I run a switch on that one. Okay, what are we at? So if we say we're on slot 1, okay, let's go over here. So get game, or the FSM game object of slot 2. Is slot 2 null? Okay, well, if it is null, then don't even bother. Don't switch. That, or if you want to switch and go like unarmed, put your weapon away, you can do that too. I just said don't switch, but I said just go back because there's nothing to switch to. But if we are going to switch, it all happens in one little state here, is set FSM integer, the pointer. So we're going to change the pointer. We're no longer pointing at 0. We're going to point at 1. Right over here we point at 0. This one we point at 1. Like I said, that just tells the system what slot are we using. So item 1 or item 2, more or less. And I used 0, 1. I should have almost used 1 and 2, but whatever. So get FSM game object, item 1, that is the current slot. Get the string of the current slot of its rest, because we want it to go back to wherever it needs to go on its rest. We hash table get the hand, so we're going to need the hand slot, but we also get that rest, so we get the rest spot of this item. Okay, now that we got that, we set parent. The current slot is going to go to that rest spot, reset local. The next slot is now going to go to the hand slot, reset local. That's it. Now the only thing you'd probably want to add is if your game had different animations, like, you know, we have a revolver, so maybe we use pistol animations, and over here we're going to use rifle animations, or maybe, you know, two-handed weapon animations, or a dagger animation, or whatever the case may be. You can have as many of them as you want, right? The only thing I would add here is in here, I mean, you could, well, you could run damage in this item, so this is, you get your damage from these items, but I would run an int called animator, right? And his value could be, say, 1. This guy could be whatever, 2, 3, 4, 5, whatever. So when you do item switching, in this same state right here, at the very end, we would get whatever item we're swapping to, right? Like we're getting, like this one we're going over to slot 2. So, or no, we're going to the next slot. Where's the next slot? Well, whatever. Yeah, right there. So we're going over to the next slot, and that's where we get it right there, as long as it's not null. So we, from the next slot here, we would get that integer and then set that integer into our animator, right? Now, it doesn't matter. You could have 50 different animation styles. As long as these weapons have that one reference saying animator is this int, we can swap it over, right? And then in the animator, of course, I don't really have any things set up in the ways of animations here, but in the animator, if I were to stick an animator on this thing, I don't think I can do that. Oh, I can do that, right? You would have a few animations here. I'm just going to create empty slots because I don't have animations, right? So, and I like to use integers. I meant to spell weapon style, but whatever. Like if this is your movement and this is another movement, and you want to swap between integers, you could also use a float and use a blend tree inside one. That also works. But I just like going like, okay, well, condition weapon style is not equal to 0, you know, and over here if weapon style is equal to 1, right? And they'll flop back and forth. But I mean, you can also do that with your attacks. Like if you do an attack, you know, maybe use a trigger, and you're coming from this, you want to do an attack, and maybe you have a couple different things here, because maybe you have, you know, swing and stab, and this one's for daggers and this one's for baseball bats, right? They both use attack, right? They would both look somewhat like that, but this one also needs, you know, this one needs to equal 0 on the weapon style, and this one weapon style needs to equal 1. Right now, because that's already set, because that's what you're running off of with your motions and everything, it should work just fine going that way, right? And you could, and that would make more sense if you're coming off of those though. But anyways, so you would put a little bit of data into here, and it's just like if you wanted to shoot, and you pulled the trigger of something, you know, and you wanted to fire bullets, we'll say, oh, how much damage you do, how fast you shoot, right? And numerous ways to do that is you could get information from your slots. One of the other things you could do would be, and I'll show you a little trick here, is let's put an FSM. It's going to be called shoot, and we're going to use an event called shoot. And you would literally use this for melee weapons, guns, whatever. So that's on the revolver. Actually, I should probably put it on everything just in case I screw this up. Now you think, okay, well, how do I shoot? Add FSM. So let's get key down, boop, and let's, I don't know, let's do alpha 2, I suppose. So we're gonna shoot. Like, okay, we could have any weapon in the frickin' world now. How do we pull this off? Well, what if we just did this? Set an event to not game object FSM, which is what I normally use for stuff, but just a game object. And I'm going to send it off to our hand, because any weapon we're using is we're going to use, it's going to be in the hand, plain and simple. Right? Send to children. Right? Just like that. And then you would put all the rest of the logic inside that. Right? So we pick that up. I hit alpha 2. Right? Obviously there's no logic set up, but if I go to shoot, you know, it's happening. Right? It's shooting. You know, and it's not shooting over on these ones. It's not happening on these guys at all. Right? It's just not happening. And if I go over and I pick up something else that has the same logic, and I swap them, of course I picked up 2 shotguns, so dumb of me. Let's pick up that guy. Right, so this guy, if I now push my shoot button, he shoots. And if I go to my shotgun that's sitting on my back, you know, I hit shoot, it's not happening to that, right? But if I swap them, right, I hit 1, and I swap, now I'm shooting, the shotgun shooting. If I look at my revolver, I hit shoot, nothing's happening now, because it's on my side. So it's just an easy way, and then you build your logic in here, right? Using all sorts of stuff. You can literally take that to the moon and back there. Do whatever with it. It's just an easy way to run those inputs down to the weapons. Well, anyways, hopefully that helps. and we'll talk to you guys in the future.